How's everybody?
That's fine.
All right, so first of all, I want to thank the Missouri Adoptee Rights Movement for having me here. And then also to say congratulations to all of you that are on the verge of getting your original birth certificates. It's a really big deal because you're going to find out, as a lot of us say in the adoption community, it's, we're finding out who we are. I mean, sure, we're finding people, but we're finding more about who we are. So that's the greatest part about it. Something that we all deserve, it's our human right. I know it's a human rights issue. So, yeah, so basically, I guess we'll move on to the next picture there, just to get a little bit of background. So like, well, I was born in New York City, and I was born in New York City, and I was raised in a family of 6 kids. My parents got divorced when I was about 4 years old. My adopted parents, so then, my mom raised the 6 of us for about, so I didn't see my adopted father until I was about 21 after that. So I kind of had what I thought was like a reunion. I had what I thought was a reunion with my father. So, that happened. And then, like this picture here, I must have been about 14 years old there. I look different. But, it's funny because a lot of people will say, well, you do look a little different. How come you never knew? Well, if somebody doesn't tell you, how are you going to ever know? They're my family. That was it. So that's kind of, how I grew up. And that's a picture of me and my brothers. We were always having a good time. I was always a goofball. You can tell which one I am, the one with the dark hair. So, Adam, he was always breaking stuff. Breaking his arm. And, so that was fun. And I have to honestly say that I think it was my siblings growing up that kind of was I think having my siblings growing up was like basically the thing that kept me grounded in life in general. I guess next. Oh yeah, it's my biological mother, my birth mom. I'm sorry, I don't know the proper terms anymore. But yeah, it's my birth mom, so I do look a little bit like her, don't I?
Yeah.
So I guess actually before I even, since her picture came up, I mentioned who she was, but to get into a little bit how I discovered I was adopted, and how I went like headfirst into reunion was, it was about 12 years ago. It was at my daughter's first birthday, and one of my cousins was like, I just found out about you a few years ago. So I was like, oh, what do you mean? And he's like, that you were adopted. I was like, oh, well, that's impossible, because nobody ever told me that. And then also, I know now a lot about what our birth certificates mean. So I showed him, I said, I have this birth certificate, it has my parents' names on it. How is that even possible? Well, all this time I have our short form birth certificate, which only had the names and I think the hospital and the city. So interesting enough, okay, that happened. And then a few years later, after he told me that, the first thing I did was ask everybody in my family, and they all said, what do you think? Like, no, it's not true. Okay. So, of course, it stayed in the back of my mind. And then I don't know, one day I was like, let me look into it. So I started Googling about, how does somebody find out they're adopted and stuff, right? And I went on Yahoo Answers. Remember that thing? I said, how can somebody find out they're adopted? And then somebody responded, they said, look at your long form birth certificate. So I don't have one. I was thinking I don't have one, but I ordered it. Then all of a sudden on my long form, it had the letter S in front of my number. It had an extra set of numbers. It also had this legal jargon they use, where it says Section 8, whatever. I don't know where that came from. Paragraph 4. So I looked it up. I Googled that, and they said, yeah, that's adoption stuff. But the biggest thing was, I was born in 1979, and the birth certificate was filed in 1983. And we all know what that means. That's when my adoption went through. So, but on my short form, it said 2 weeks later. That's why I didn't pick up on that right away. So, I guess a big catalyst for me with all that was I registered with the New York Adoption Registry, and I don't know if any of you have been through the processes of trying to register with the registries. They really don't work in general. So I got kind of lucky because I filled out the registry. They said within 6 months you'll get an answer, some kind of answer. My non-identifying or something. I said okay, but then I got a response 2 weeks later, and it said, by the way, someone else is registered. So I guess maybe we go to the next slide, see what it is. Well, I'll talk about this one a little bit, but they said someone else was registered, so I was like, okay. I was like, oh, it's probably my birth mom, because they're the ones that usually look for the kids, right? But it was my birth father who was registered. So, and well, my birth mom actually couldn't read or write, so it could have been her anyway. But, she wouldn't have known how to do that. But so he registered, and it wasn't like, I don't think he was never actively looking for me. What it was he had a friend of his he went to church with that was adopted. And this guy told him, because he told him a story about me and my other brother, he said, if you ever want to find them, fill out the registry. So that's what caused him to do that. Sometimes, and I think this goes into like support systems, like it's always like having someone else tell you something to push you along rather than things getting swept under the rug. So, I guess I have to find this friend and maybe thank him one day. So, so after that happened, he immediately, after we got connected, we talked on the phone for about 2 hours, and he was honest with me about everything. Like he told me my birth mother's name. He told me, first he only told me about my one full-blooded brother, who him and my birth mom had together. It's like, okay, cool, all right. I was like, okay. But once I found her name, I looked her up right away, and I got a phone number, and someone answered the phone. It was her husband of 25 years. So I was like, okay. It's like, yeah, my name's Keith. I think I might be one of Anna's sons. And he's like, well, it's possible. She had many kids, which I'll get into a little bit later. But all right, so we talked, then we hung up the phone, and this would be a good lesson for those that are on the brink of contact within the next few months. We talked, and then we hung up the phone, right? And I was like, something was telling me to call him back. So this is the part of the story that may get a little, but then I'll catch myself. So I called him back like about 4 hours later. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah, by the way, he's like, I needed to digest what you said. So he's like, your grandparents want to talk to you, your aunts and uncles want to talk to you, one of your sisters, so immediately like that night, I spoke to like 4 or 5 different people. Started looking them up on Facebook, started connecting with people on Facebook. And then this is when I got the first inkling that she had other kids. By the way, this picture right here, this is my wife, my daughter. My son was there, he's in the back. And then, these are a couple uncles, my grandfather, grandmother, one of my sisters, her son. Actually, I think that's a foster kid of one of the uncles or something. And, so there was like 30 people at the house for that one time. And so that's how I am. I'm just like, I just roll with things. So I handle that, whatever. But so I guess what I'm getting into here is the fact that after I got all the information. So, all right. And by the way, I want to say, like with a lot of my story, I don't consider things negative or positive. It's just like facts about my experiences. So, like my birth mom, she was a prostitute. That was her occupation. And I say occupation, I mean, I respect that's what she did to survive. But her and my birth father had like a 7-year relationship. So, and they were both addicted to drugs at the time, so it's probably one of those codependent. By the way, he's 7 years younger than her. So, and he's, so basically I grew up in an Italian Jewish family, and I found out I'm half Puerto Rican and half Hungarian. But, so all this time, everywhere I go, people speak Spanish to me, and I used to almost get offended because I'd be like, I don't speak Spanish. But like, you know, people, see, that's the thing, I think a lot of people see from the outside what you don't see about yourselves a lot of times. So that was some of the stuff I dealt with growing up, which now it's been easy to handle. Because like someone who speaks Spanish to me, I'll almost tell them, I'll be like, yeah, I don't speak Spanish, even though I am. And I'll be like, yeah, can you guess why? Some of them will get it. Like, oh, you were like, grew up with another family? Yeah, you know. Like, yeah. So I think that's getting off the subject a little bit. But I'm curious what the next picture is. I can't remember which one I. Oh yes, that's my biological father. And then my kids, and that's his adopted son. Yep, just like Don. My birth father, well, he has an adopted son. This was 5 years ago, so I think Nathan is about 16, 17 now. As a matter of fact, they said when he turns 18, if he's interested, like they'll, you know, I'll probably help him find some of his family, you know, so that'll be nice. But yeah, my birth father, he's been doing good for many years now. He's been married for about 20 years. He owns a moving company. So what's interesting about that, I've seen him a lot over the years because he does moving jobs. He's in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm in Maryland, which is about 5 hours apart. But he'll do like moving jobs up and down the East Coast. And he'll just stop by for a few hours, you know. So, you know, did I mention, well, my birth mom, did I mention, I never met her. She passed before I found her. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned that part when I saw her picture. So. But she lived, you know, she lived a long life, I'd say, considering her circumstances. Because she was in a lot of rough situations. And I'm not just saying this because he's my birth father, but they say he was like the only one that was like, I guess like decent to her. You know, he didn't force her to live the lifestyle. You know, whereas a couple of the other, when I first connected her, they said, so which father is yours? You know, I said Peter, and they were like, you know, I think they were thankful for that almost, because you know, because I told them I found him, and so yeah, and I think we look a little bit alike. You know, we have a lot of the same mannerisms, if anything. By the way, I did do a DNA test with him about 2 years after I found him because I had to be sure, because of the lifestyle they were both living and stuff. Even though a lot of the family, they said there's no denying it. So, yeah, I'm curious about what the next one is, I guess. Oh yeah, this is a pretty cool picture I got of my birth mom as a baby, and then my grandparents. So I've been blessed with all this information. You know, like pictures like this, and I think I look like my grandfather a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, and you know what, I was gonna get into this a little bit later, but I'll get into it now. And I'll say, even with my mom, my adopted mom I grew up with, I feel like, you know, she didn't tell me for whatever reasons, but it's okay. And then, you know, like my birth mom is a baby. So I look at it like this. I'm like, you know, in the conveyor belt of life, the world being the factory of us, you know, in the conveyor belt of life, all right, we're going along, and we're being built. You know, we come out of we're being built, but you can't let somebody else's inability to move on to keep you from growing. So that's what I keep in mind, you know. So my adopted mom inability to tell me that she couldn't move past the fact that I'm not her blood son or whatever, that was not going to keep me from like moving full speed ahead and just, you know, going just full speed ahead. Because I just want to see what the next one is. I hope it's well. That's a pretty cool one. Where my grandparents visited me in D.C. They lived in New York for a while, but then they back in Puerto Rico. He's a World War II vet, you know, but they're back in Puerto Rico now because it's warmer there. Well, not too well over there now, but they'll come back in the summer. But they visited me, so that was really nice. I think the next one is the one I was gonna. Yeah, here we go. So they told me I had 7 siblings. So I was like, okay, where are they? Oh, nobody knows their names, birthdays, anything. So I'm like, all right, well, I gotta find them. I just have to. I can't let them linger out there in the world, not knowing where they come from. So I was like, okay. The adoption registry, the New York adoption registry, it hit twice for me. But this is the only reason why. Because when I called them again, I told them, I said, I found my birth mom, they connected my birth father, but I said I found my birth mother too. And they said, no, what's your name? I said, Anna Rosato. And they said, they have a Rosato named Anna, but and I was like, no, it's one N. Just one N. You know, A-N-A. And I don't know, I guess something in their system, when they corrected that, it all of a sudden connected me with one of the other sisters who was registered, which, pretty amazing. So like, she was registered, and when I connected with her, she already had found another sister and another brother who passed already. Well, he passed from like diabetes related, but I just think he wasn't living a healthy lifestyle with the diabetes. I think he was doing drugs and stuff too. So, and then when that happened, I was like, okay. Oh yeah. Then I looked at her non-identified information, and her non-identified information mentioned the fact that she was one of 4 by the same father. So I had their birth dates. So I had his birth date. Yeah, so I had his birthday. He was the last one of those. So I looked up his birthday and all that stuff. I did some research through the we used to have this